Welcome everyone to the Kentucky Kid, and let me tell you something, it is great to be back. I feel like I have been a hibernating bear over the last 3 months. I think I mentioned this on the fan page and maybe in the last episode that I did, but the reason why I did not do an episode over the summer is because I did not have any camera access over the summer, and frankly, gas is not cheap, as many of you are aware of, and I did not feel like driving 90 miles once a week just to record a show and go back home, because I don't get paid enough for this. Actually, I don't get paid anything for this, so, you know, I definitely don't get paid enough for this, but I have a good time, and I'm glad to be back. The hibernation is over, the cricket is sounding, and I've got to address this. We have this closet that's right behind the camera. You probably can't hear it, but there has been a cricket that has been sounding off incessantly, and it's probably going to get on my nerves. So if I start glaring the glare of death halfway through, I'm probably trying to incinerate this cricket with my thoughts. Hopefully it'll work. Hopefully the cricket will come out of the closet and we can get back to our peaceful lives. But anyway, speaking of peaceful lives, I'm in my apartment last night. Got moved to an apartment out of the dorm room, thank God. And over the summer I had noticed that I had some low blood pressure. Like, I took it one summer day and it was like 98 over 42. Very, very low stuff. And I've been getting really, really dizzy of late. So last night I get up, and I get up way too quickly out of the chair, and I feel dizzy. I get up, and suddenly, like, as I'm stretching to get ready to go to bed or something, everything in my body just starts shaking. I start stumbling back. My roommate said I looked drunk, and I nearly fall over, collapse, and the room just about goes black on me. I nearly blacked out. And so I say all that to say that if I start randomly convulsing and black out on this show, go ahead and laugh at me if you want to, because after all, we only live once. Have a little cheap humor at my expense if it comes to that. Hopefully that won't happen though. So, speaking of weird things that have happened, I've been running the soundboard for the radio station that I have a job with, and one of the things that I do is I run the soundboard for the football games here at the college. We had a 6-hour and 24-minute long game that was delayed for like 3 hours or something. Maybe that had to do with my sickness, because I was out at the radio station until like 1:30 in the morning. Had to tank myself up on caffeine just to stay awake. I don't know. Speaking of football though, football has started. We are back. And let me tell you something, my favorite sport ever, American football, not European football. No, we're not going there. Anyway, so I've got a lot of things to talk about today. UK football, U of L football, Western Kentucky football. Get those predictions set. Tim Tebow's future in the NFL, or lack thereof. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, I want to talk about a quarterback that can actually play the position with some respectability. New freshman quarterback at Florida State. His name is James Winston. I believe his first name is James, yes, and it's spelled very strange, Jameis, so I think it's James anyway. They must be thrilled that their starting quarterback, who by the way was the second most accurate quarterback on the day, the backup went 2 for 2, went 25 for 27 for 356 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks, and a 41-13 throttling of Pittsburgh. If I'm not mistaken, that game was at Pittsburgh too. But this game, that stat line is so phenomenal for so many different reasons. First off, he spreads the ball around. He hit 7 different receivers with 25 completions, okay? What we find a lot of freshman quarterbacks like to do, especially freshman quarterbacks that can run, and he can. He scored a touchdown on the ground as well. They'll look to their first progression. They might look to their second progression, their second route, and if neither one of those are open, they're taking off. He doesn't do that. He settles down. He was very calm. He was very collected. He went 1, 2, 3, 4 dump off routes. He did what he had to do. He managed the game. And yeah, he ran when he had to, which is nice to see. But I like the fact that he knows he can run, but at the same time doesn't rely on that. To put this game into perspective, though, to put this performance into perspective, Florida State's last quarterback, E.J. Manuel, who was drafted in the first round, by the way, by the Buffalo Bills, never had a 4-touchdown and 0-pick game in his entire collegiate career. He also only threw for over 350 yards twice. James Winston did both of those things last Saturday, and he is a freshman. Wait, it was either Saturday or Monday. It was last week. The first week is weird with games. There are games on like Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Whatever day it was. But this performance got me thinking, and I know it's just 1 week. It's just one game. Could we see the second straight year where a freshman quarterback wins the Heisman? Because this guy, if he can keep this up for the entire season, he might have a shot. Speaking of quarterbacks that have won the Heisman as a freshman, Johnny Manziel in the news again. And for those of you that don't know, he was suspended for the first half of their opening game against Rice. The reason why he was suspended was mostly unclear, had something to do with him signing autographs and selling them, some kind of college rule BS. But anyway, he had to sit out the first half. His stat line for the game, 6 of 8, 94 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also ran 6 times for 19 yards. That's a pretty impressive stat line for just really about a quarter and a half. And the reason why he played that little, again, had to sit out for the first half, but also the kid is so freaking retarded. Okay, every good play that he had, you see the cameras zoom in on him, and he's trash talking with the other team. Now, keep this in mind. He was the Heisman Trophy winner last year, right? That means he was voted the best player in the country. He was not elected captain on his own team. All right, what that shows, what this shows me is he lacks the maturity to use his skill set to his advantage and to the advantage of the team. Granted, he's only a sophomore. But this still worries me a little bit because the guy has got a really, really high ceiling. But if this immaturity keeps popping up, keeps sprouting, and gets worse, we may see another good career potentially go down the tubes, or at the very least, not be what it was expected to be. And on the note of careers that do not turn out to be what they were expected to be, let me just make an honest statement here. I hate talking about Tim Tebow. I really do. All right, it's like the politics of football. It really is. It's like, oh, he's a good guy. He's a good role model. Listen, I don't give a crap. I really don't. I mean, if a guy's a good role model, fine. Reggie White was a great role model, but you know what? He also played his position pretty well. Tim Tebow has done one of those two things so far. He got cut by the Patriots. Big freaking surprise. Quarterback that can't throw gets cut, right? But everybody's been making this huge ordeal about it. As usual, because, I swear, half of the country that likes football has, a shrine or something where they bow down and worship Tim Tebow and Moses and Jesus, the manger baby or whatever. I don't know. He's going to, form his own cult or something. It's going to be like Mormonism, except, I don't know, Tebowism. You're going to be Tebowing with Tebowism. It's stupid, really. Stats don't lie. Okay, you can't always go by stats, but stats don't lie, folks. And when you read the stat line, 11 of 30, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, and taking 7 sacks for 48 yards. It's over a span of 3 games, okay? Here's why he got cut. preseason stats do not get a lot of merit when you're talking about starting players, particularly starting quarterbacks. Why? Well, they get one drive, maybe two per game. In the last game, they might get a little bit more than that. One or two drives isn't going to do squat to say who somebody really is. I could have one or two drives in a pickup game of football. It's been a long summer, folks. I could have one or two drives in football in a pickup game and either look like a freaking genius or someone who can't throw. That's just the way it is. I mean, one or two drives is not a great grade. But when you're talking about a third-string quarterback who's playing against second and third-string defenses, and he posts 11 of 30 and takes 7 sacks, yeah, cut him. Because honestly, I have a feeling that the only reason why they signed him in the first place was because of this Aaron Hernandez fiasco. Because have you noticed, Aaron Hernandez is not really being talked about as much as he was. So do I think that Tebow's career is over? Because the idea has been thrown out that maybe his career is over. I think it should be. Because honestly, at the end of the day, if you can't throw as a quarterback, then you should not have a career as a quarterback. But either one of two things happen. A, he gets signed by Jacksonville because Jacksonville desperately needs to sell tickets. Or B, another team needs a publicity stunt after their star player gets arrested for murder or something. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the only reason why he was signed by the Patriots. But the signing really didn't make any sense. And I think deep down, anyone with a brain knew that. But moving on to college sports, and I think I've talked enough about a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. How about a quarterback who really knows what he's doing on a team that could and probably should run the table? U of L has got a stacked program, folks. I'm talking 12-0 season, and they may win each game by an average of 30 points, at least. Couple of reasons for that. A weak schedule, strong running game, a Heisman dark horse candidate, and a great defense, okay? Let's start with the first thing, weak strength of schedule. The toughest games that Louisville has, as of now, unless a team just pops up and starts doing really well, at Cincinnati in the final game of the season on December 5th, and at UConn on November 8th. The schedule other than that, Eastern Kentucky at home, at UK, Florida International, at Temple, Rutgers, UCF, South Florida, the South Florida game being on the road, and then Houston and Memphis at home. It's not a very strong schedule, folks, and really probably by the end of the year, one, maybe two of those teams will be ranked, but probably just Cincinnati, and maybe not even them. They have a phenomenal backfield. Michael Dyer was the 2010 running back for Auburn when they won the BCS title game. As a freshman in the SEC, he ran for over 1,000 yards. And he's bounced around with some disciplinary issues and wound up at Louisville. I think he went to Arkansas State from Auburn and then transferred to he didn't even play football last year. So he's come back. He's not even the starter. Okay, and this guy is probably still getting acclimated to the D1 game. But when you have a guy who just 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, rather, ran for over 1,000 yards in the SEC, and he's not even your starting running back, that's a scary proposition. And add that with the fact that he's got Teddy Bridgewater, who's probably the most NFL-ready quarterback right now. Aaron Murray being a close second out of Georgia. But this guy could win the Heisman, and actually probably should win the Heisman. Again, they have a weak schedule, and against Miami, he threw for 355 yards, 5 touchdowns, went 23 of 28. Really only had one bad pass that ended up getting picked off. He underthrew a guy on a seam route, and the safety came up and intercepted it. Listen, he's another quarterback that a lot like, oh shoot, what was the name of the guy at Florida State? James Winston. Like Winston, can run, chooses not to a lot, works through his progressions. He's got a great offensive line in front of him, a great running game to support him. Really not a lot of pressure on this guy. And plus, they have a great defense. Ohio came into this game last year. They averaged 4.4 yards per carry. Not a phenomenal number, but a pretty solid number. Against Louisville, 2.9. 2.9 yards a carry. Their front line just blasted the Bobcats' front line. I mean, the top 4 guys on U of L's defensive line all made either the first, second, or third teams in the Big East. I mean, that's a phenomenal feat when all 4 guys and 8 of your 11 defensive players, I believe, are on the Big East teams, one of those 3. The hardest thing for Louisville this year is going to be earning respect. The weak strength of schedule is really not going to guarantee them any kind of BCS berth outside of the at-large bid that the now American Athletic, formerly the Big East Conference, is going to get. According to a lot of predictions, they're slotted in the Sugar Bowl, which is usually where the Big East, now American Athletic Conference winner ends up. They have a shot to run the table. They probably will run the table. They'll probably go undefeated. If they do that, they have an outside chance of getting into the BCS championship game, because any one-loss team in any of the other power conferences, the Big East conferences, or the BCS conferences rather, or maybe even a 2-loss team out of the SEC or Big Ten might trump them in that selection. So they're going to have to run the table. They're going to have to absolutely beat the snot out of whoever they play. And they're going to have to get some outside help. It's a long shot, but I would keep your eye on this team because they should definitely win the American Athletic Conference. They should definitely run the table. They will get into some form of BCS Bowl unless some sort of injury happens. But it's got to be an exciting year for Louisville Cardinal fans. While Louisville Cardinal fans are excited, us here, Bleeding Blue, are not. I had a situation, and I have a class on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, I enter the basement building, or the basement of this building. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, as I enter the basement of this building, there is a couple standing right in front of the door. Right in front of the door. Making out. To make matters worse, I can't walk around them because their combined weight is near or north of 500 pounds. It is absolutely disgusting. So I can't walk around them. They're right in front of the door. I have to pretty much walk through them. Right? They're all up in my face. Hey, we're a couple. We're making out, you know. So I pretty much have to be a part of this awkward, mayonnaise-inducing, sweaty 3-way to get to class. I want to tell them, get a room. Okay, just get a room. I don't care that you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. I don't care that you're happy about that. Honestly, congrats, bravo, happy for you. Don't shove it in my face. So I've been wanting to tell a lot of UK fans to go get a room. They have a good recruiting class coming for football by Kentucky standards. They have a great coach coming in. That's by anyone's standards. And they're all up in my face with it. Hey, look at us. You know, we got Zadarius Smith, and we got a couple of good linebackers, and we got a good coach. Yeah, let me tell you something, okay? Be up all in my face with it when you actually have a full package to present that's attractive. Okay, much like the girl. Okay? Don't be all up in my face when you have a girlfriend who could be a sumo wrestler, and probably a pretty good one too. And much like that, don't be all up in my face with this new head coach and a couple of good recruits when the rest of your package sucks. And we saw that Saturday when Western Kentucky pretty much bent you over and raped you with a stun gun. So until you have a package that you can present to me that actually is worth anything at all, go get a room and come back later when your proverbial girlfriend has lost a couple 100 pounds. Kentucky may only win 2 games this year. If that. They might squeak out 3. They may only win 1. I have them slotted winning Miami of Ohio and Alabama State. Couple reasons for the 2-10 record. An extremely tough schedule, folks. I mean, this is not a kind stretch. After this Miami of Ohio game, they play at home against 8th-ranked U of L, at home against 12th-ranked Florida, at 6th-ranked South Carolina. Yeah, they're 6. And then back at home against number 1 Alabama. That is murderous. They can't stop the run. If Antonio Andrews runs all over him, and he's a great running back, and if the Western Kentucky offensive line, albeit a good one, but if the Western Kentucky offensive line blows you out of the water, what's an SEC school going to do? Really? Alabama may only have to start 3 offensive linemen against us. That may be all it takes to have a great running game. Their line play, like I said earlier, was terrible. And that was probably the most disheartening thing, because I was told all off season, UK's going to have a great defensive line, great defensive line, great defensive line. That was like going to be the staple of this team. And then in comes Western Kentucky and just dissipates them. I mean, it was awful. On a positive note, and I don't like to be extremely negative all the time, because nobody likes a nag. The running game for Kentucky looked pretty good, and that's probably going to be the building point for this team. Raymond Sanders had 98 yards on 14 carries, and the team had 216 yards on the ground. That's a good place to start. But I want to issue a word of caution to UK fans, okay? You saw John Calipari come in and in 1 year take this NIT team that was just abysmal and take them to the Elite Eight with John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins and company, and just reload and reload and reload, and constantly, with the exception of last year, have a pretty good team. Football is different. Football is a much more elaborate process that takes a lot more time. And the reason why it takes a lot more time is, first, you're competing against schools in the SEC for recruits. And secondly, you need a lot more players to make a good team. Whereas John Calipari, all he had to do, and granted it was a daunting task, was to bring in John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, and a couple of other guys that first year to transform this team. If you bring in 2 or 3 really good guys to a football program, it may improve you in those areas, but overall the record is probably going to stay the same. Like, Zadarius Smith isn't going to get Kentucky any more wins. Okay, he might take the Alabama spread from 50 to 45, but he's not going to win you any more games. It's going to be a process. So don't expect a bowl game this year or next year, and probably not even the year after that. Expect improvement game by game, week by week. If I get that as a fan of UK, if I get that, I'll be happy. And you should be too. Don't expect a bowl game anytime soon. Heard a classmate say that we were 3 years away from a BCS bowl. For crying out loud, stuff your mouth. Seriously. Don't give me that BS. You know, those are the kind of fans I was talking about whenever I said go get a room. So U of L is going to have a good year. Kentucky's going to suck. What about Western? Okay, and honestly, like, I really haven't given them much thought up until last week, whenever they really controlled the game and won by a lot more than what the 9-point spread on the scoreboard would say. I honestly, and maybe this is just a little bit of embellishment because, maybe Kentucky's just even worse than I thought. I have them going 11-1, with their only loss being at Louisiana Monroe, who's probably going to win the Sun Belt. But this team has got a phenomenal running game, not just by Sun Belt standards. Antonio Andrews is going to be a Sunday back. You can bank on that. He is going to be a Sunday running back, and perhaps one day a starter in the NFL. This guy ran for almost 1,700 yards last year. Had over 2,100 all-purpose yards. 14 total touchdowns. And this year he could be even better. They have a great line play. I've said this before, I'll say it again. They blew Kentucky's line out of the water on both sides of the ball. Especially that offensive line. And Kentucky's defensive line was supposed to be one of the best in the SEC. Probably not now, but preseason, that's what the expectation was. And they have a great new head coach in Bobby Petrino who knows how to coach different units. Remember, this guy used to coach at Louisville. And he had a high-flying offense with Brian Brom at quarterback that scored like 60 points a game. And now he's coaching a power running game. And by the looks of what happened last Saturday, I would say he knows what he's doing. And they could compete for the Sun Belt title, and honestly, they could run the table. Because this team is only going to get better under their new head coach. They're only going to get better. And that's a scary thought, considering they dominated an SEC school, even if it is Kentucky. If they do end up winning the Sun Belt, and they do run the table, are we talking about a BCS team here? Are we talking about a dark horse that Boise State used to be? I don't know. They're going to have a lot of luck on their side. They're going to have to win against Tennessee first and foremost, which is next week's game, and it's at Tennessee. I have them winning that game. Would not be entirely surprised if they lose. Because still, they're going to be on an emotional high from the Kentucky win, let's be honest. And sometimes that can work in your favor, sometimes it doesn't. I really hope they win, though. I hope they win because, first off, I just hate Tennessee. Second off, I want the UK loss to look better. And third, I do like Western. I do enjoy watching them. I have no hard feelings against Bobby Petrino like some Kentucky fans do. And I have no problem rooting for a team in Kentucky. Like, I have no problem rooting for Louisville either. But the toughest games on their schedule are going to be Louisiana Monroe at Louisiana Monroe and at home against Louisiana Lafayette. Last year, at home, Western lost to the Warhawks 43-42 in overtime. That's Louisiana Monroe. And at Louisiana Lafayette, they lost 31-27. Those are both close games. Those are going to be the toughest teams on this year's schedule, especially in their conference. If they can win those games, if they can win out, I really hope they do, because it would be awesome to see two undefeated teams coming out of the state of Kentucky. It really would. Just fathom that for a second. Two 12-0 teams from the state of Kentucky. I hope it happens. It's a long shot, but we'll see. We'll see. Let me backtrack for just a moment. I meant to say this earlier, but I got confused and got carried away with the whole Kentucky thing and forgot to say this earlier. The 2014 football schedule was released and for Kentucky, and I'm pretty sure Louisville's has been released too. I haven't had a chance to look at that one yet. The UK U of L game is slated for the last game of the season as opposed to the first, or as they've been doing recently in this year, third game of the season. I can sort of understand how a few fans wouldn't like this. It's change, it's different, etc. I enjoy it, and here's why. It gives the UK and U of L rivalry which in both sports is a very underrated rivalry in my opinion. It gives that rivalry some national merit because look at other games that are on the last game of the season. Georgia, Georgia Tech, Florida, Florida State, Clemson, South Carolina, and now you have Kentucky and Louisville. The reason they're moving this game to the last game of the year is because the SEC and ACC, which remember, Louisville's moving to the ACC next year. The SEC and the ACC like to have those in-state rivalry games on the last game of the season. You know, Clemson, all the games that I just said earlier. I enjoy it. I'd like to hear your thoughts, though. I mean, because I can understand why some people wouldn't enjoy this, but I personally am a huge fan of it. Gonna get it a little inventive with the closing here, and it's something that a lot of, well, not a lot of, but some sports shows do this, and it's a little segment I'm going to introduce called Buying or Selling. And basically, throw an idea out there, hypothetical situation, Baltimore going to win the Super Bowl again this year. And if I'm buying into it, I would say buying, and here's why I think that's going to happen. And if I'm not buying into that, I'm going to say selling, and I'm going to say that's why I don't agree with that. A little cheesy, but we're going to mix things up because honestly, I want to flex my creative muscle here a little bit, as my roommate would say, and just explore some different boundaries, see what works, and be enjoyable here. 3 things. Number 1, going to talk a little baseball here for a second, make a guy in the next office, Dwayne Bonifer, proud. The Cincinnati Reds winning the NL Central. Man, it's really hard to sell on this one because I like Cincinnati. They've got a good team. Let's be honest though, those bats are so inconsistent. So inconsistent. I mean, some days they make the ball look like bottle rockets, just chucking crap out of the stadium. When they posted, 10 runs against St. Louis a couple of games ago, 9 runs in, I believe, the first 2 innings. They looked phenomenal. And there are other games where their bats look like Swiss cheese and they can swing all they want to, and it's like it either just goes straight through it or it's a little doinker to shortstop. I mean, cannot tell you how many times I've seen Todd Frazier ground into double plays. Just ticks me off beyond belief. But listen, they're a good team. They've got a great pitching unit. I think they have an underrated manager. A lot of people rip on him. Let's be honest. I mean, managers and coaches only do as well as the team around them. Okay? I mean, if John Calipari was coaching a high school team, do you think he would lead them to the national championship in D1 basketball? No. No. They have a little influence. Let's not douse them in Gatorade every time they win and lynch them every time they lose. Cincinnati's got 2 inconsistent at-bats, though. I think they're a playoff team. They're right now, as of Wednesday, 7.5 games ahead of Arizona for the second wild card spot. They're getting into the playoffs, avoiding, of course, an Atlanta-like meltdown in September. They're a playoff team. They're not a pennant winner. Keeping in baseball, the New York Yankees making the postseason, buying or selling. It's been a phenomenal run, and I've been back and forth on this. I'm going to sell on this one, though. Here's why. Tough schedule ahead. They have a 4-game homestand coming up against Boston, followed by a 10-game road stretch, 4 at Baltimore, who's really good this year, 3 at Boston, and 3 at Toronto. If they can survive that stretch, they may make the playoffs. They're only 2.5 back from the second wild card spot. If they don't survive that stretch, if they go anything worse than 5-5 over that road stretch, and if they get any less than 2 wins at home against Boston, count them out. They're probably done. Because they've still got a couple of good teams right behind them, Baltimore being one of them, who's only, I believe, 3 games back in that wild card race. The final segment installation of buying or selling here. UK basketball having a 40-0 record. Big time sell. Huge sell. Not even going to pretend that I think this is going to happen, and here's why. Last year, remember last year, folks? They were number 3 in the preseason. Nerlens Noel is going to be a better shot blocker than Anthony Davis. Alex Poitras is the second coming of Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Look what happened, Robert Morris. For crying out freaking loud. They're not going 40-0. Okay? They should be the most talented team on paper in the country. They should win the national championship. They probably will. In fact, I'm just going to go and predict that now. They're going to win the ninth. They're not going 40-0. They have road games against North Carolina. They have a road game on senior night at Florida, which is basically a trap pit for any team, especially Kentucky, because Florida gets riled up for Kentucky. Every SEC team gets riled up for Kentucky. Every SEC team gives Kentucky their best shot. So don't come at me and say that they're going to go 40-0 because it's a vague possibility, nothing more than that. If the team gels and turns into like the second coming of Superman or something, sure, chalk them up for 40-0. If they have any kind of gelling problems, like we saw last year, no. And as much as I would like to see it, no. Don't toy with the idea. Just be content that they're probably going to win the championship. Man, us Kentucky fans are some of the greediest people ever. We're not even happy with a championship prospect, but hibernation is over. I enjoyed this. I really did. And I hope you all enjoyed it too. Gonna try and go to 2 shows a week instead of 1. Because, honestly, I'd just like to crank out as many shows as I can because I have so much to talk about. It's been a summer layoff and I'm back. Oh, it's great. But anyway, coming up in the next show, I'm going to talk some NFL, some new quarterbacks that you may want to keep an eye on that are going to be starting in week 1. Might unveil the entire record prediction that took me 3 hours. For every single team. But until then, see you next time.